that country found itself in what I would call political turbulence. I mean, really, there was manifestation, protest. People were getting killed. Public property was getting destroyed. Opposition leaders were getting arrested, taken to jail. And everybody was beginning to believe, Senegal being the only country that one could at least say the coup d'etat has never happened. You know, there was at least a semblance of democracy. Something was happening. The country was at a cliff. But somehow, their institutions was able to withstood it, and they came out of it. And last week, the incumbent was defeated. We have a change of government by the opposition, winning also on the first round, in the first round, not the second round. Everybody was thinking that there's going to be a deuxième tour, like they would like to call it. It never happened. Something happened. Brother Karamba, what happened in Senegal?
Well, thank you, Musa. What happened in Senegal is historic, is titanic, and it is the first time, as far as I can remember, on the continent of Africa, and pretty much in most parts of the world, where an insurgent group within the span of less than 10 years is able to take on an entrenched establishment. And in Senegal, we have to understand what constitutes the establishment there. Is the establishment is not only one class of people. The establishment in Senegal, from the little that I know of that country, there is the political establishment, and then it extends also to their allies in the private sector, who are also connected to the same political establishment of both parties. And then also there is the religious class, the people that run the the religious hierarchy, not the regular Muslims in Senegal. That is a class of themselves who are also part of the establishment. So essentially, what Pasteur undertook to do was to take on that entire establishment, offer an alternative vision to the Senegalese people, to tell them for 60 years things have not gone the right way. And the reason it has not gone the right way is that the system itself is a problem. It is not delivering. And they did not only define the opposition, they also conceived and then very thoroughly and methodically explained an alternative to the system. And that is not an easy thing to do in a society where millions of people are under the grasp and influence of a sort of an establishment and a minority that kind of just exercise outsized influence over people. So to get around that, they had to be very, 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 very determined. They also had to be very, very, very clear about the alternative they are doing. They are offering the Senegalese people. And then they also had to define accurately what constitutes the establishment. Who are they? And what are they doing to you, the ordinary Senegalese? And I think that was what they had from the very beginning. And it took them quite a bit of time to get the messaging just right, because you have to make the messaging to where it's relatable to the average Senegalese, not only the guy who is plugged into the system in Dakar, but then the guy who is outside, who is looking at himself and then saying, well, I can't make a life here anymore. I got to go into the sea. I got to do this, or I have to come to Dakar and then live in a small place and that sort of thing. So it was a combination of having a vision and then also having a leader who understood how to plan and then how to execute, and then also how to constitute a team to help him further, build up on the plan. Because you have to remember, it's not only the political and the brain trust behind Pasteur. It's a very strong one too. So all in all, this is a historic thing. That to take on an establishment is not easy in a continent where millions of people can be swayed by a few individuals who are very crafty, who know how to amass power and exercise it. to get around those people and then beat them. I think people will be learning the lessons here for many, many, many years in terms of how did they plan this thing and how did they execute it. And then the establishment obviously pushed back big time, you know, but they were able to surmount all of that. And that is not a mean feat, Musa. It is a very, very, very difficult. And then they were prepared to pay the price. Now, a lot of times in African politics, most people don't succeed because they are not willing to pay the price. You have to be willing to pay the price in blood, in liberty, and then in resources to take on an entrenched establishment, because if you don't do it, they are going to find a way to survive. So they are able to do that, and I think it's a miracle. And they have resonated with the Senegalese people in a way. I think this is almost like the toothpaste is out of the box. You cannot put it back in there. I think Senegalese society is up for fundamental change.
Wow, no doubt. Keba, what happened in Senegal? What have we just witnessed? A country that was almost on the cliff, anarchy, constitutional crisis. They were able to come out of it. Elections were organized and change happened in Senegal. What have we just witnessed, Keba? Unbelievable.
Well, we just witnessed a change of system. Just like Karamba said, the establishment was an entrenched system in Senegal. And we just witnessed a change of system. The system was entrenched, and it's been entrenched since after independence. And the Sonko and Jomai team present to the Senegalese people an alternative and said that, look, this is the system that we ought to get. And they present that system, alternative system, to the Senegalese, and the Senegalese bought into it. They changed the whole political landscape. And thanks to the civic education of the Senegalese. Remember that Senegal is one of the only country in West Africa that have never been through a coup. Right. And the reason for that was partly having strong institutions, like they demonstrated throughout this political process that just happened. And also a very thorough civic education.
Right.
I remember going to Senegal years back, and I was in a taxi, and I was talking to this taxi driver, and he was explaining the political situation, the political system to me. He thoroughly understands the whole political process. And I was so impressed. I'm like, wow. Even the layman, the taxi drivers, the ordinary people in the street, they can explain to you the political process. And they thoroughly understand the political process and what it entails. That is due to some serious civic education. So combining all those factors,
right,
the past have come up with a system, with an ideology. They come up with an ideology, they come up with an idea. And they present this idea to the Senegalese people, and the Senegalese people bought the idea. And it is this idea that wins the election, that won the election in Senegal. It was not Sonko or Jomai. It was the new idea, the new system that they presented to the Senegalese people. So this tells me that the system of big man, the personality politics that dominated Africa is about to erode and is about to go away.
Yeah.
The main reason why PASTEF is successful, when Macky Sall was concentrating on Sonko,
right,
because they already set up a system, it was very easy to come up with the slogan and then choose a different flag bearer
candidate
in the name of Diomaye, and then the idea continues and Diomaye win the election. So that tells you that when an idea is presented and the voters buy into that idea, it doesn't matter who is the flag bearer. The system will win the election.
Wow. So Keba is saying, Saul, that is a system change and not this personality cult. But we also witness that there is a Sonko. There is a person behind the system. What say you? What have we witnessed, Saul? Is it more a combination of personality and system and messaging? Or is it all about personality? What have we witnessed?
Well, to begin with, Musa, I didn't say hello to Keva and Karamba, but hello, guys. I think the personality you just mentioned, Musa, was taken up as a result of the accusations that were laid on the person of Sonko in the past 5-6 years. So that had a different dynamic in terms of whether the personality of the person of Sonko was being trusted to become the leader. I say this because in 2022, when I went to Gambia, I visited with my friend who was a candidate, although they removed him in the list of those who were potential runners for the election. So I believed he and I had this feeling that maybe whatever these accusations are, there might have been some truth to it. So the personality was taken up. That's number one. I think what happened, Musa, was planning, 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 then the sensitization that Keba Foon was talking about and Karamba. But there were certain things that this PASTEF overcame in this campaign and to the election. But the planning, I believe, was the most circumstantial accomplishment. When he realized, I believe, I don't know what's in his head, but we can tell looking at the way they campaigned, how he set up himself, knowing that the system which we're talking about was about to really suffocate him, and they intended to do it. This young man could have been killed. I mean, the accusations came, but they started to fall flat. People didn't seem to believe it. And you know, Maki is a very smart guy, Musa. Macky Sall has been in government for how many years? 24, I believe, maybe longer than that.
In
So
different categories, yes, absolutely.
Correct. And Senegal's economy was headed in a direction up until 6-7 years ago, in the area of some experts that it was becoming a middle class economy. So you can tell that there was a lot of sensitization in terms of informing the people from their end, Macky Sall trying to make sure that he portrays this young man as a dangerous, irresponsible young man. They were succeeding to some extent, but the planning of these young men and the PASTEF group was one of the most pivotal things. I mentioned this, Musa, for the very first time, I believe, correct me guys if I'm wrong, that these elections were conducted and they won without the influence or having to seek some guidance and support from the Murit, the Tuba folks. Am I right or wrong, sir? They tried to avoid them. Yeah, they tried to avoid them as much as possible, even though they all know that this is about country. Doesn't mean we have to. But this was a planned election that actually ended up being so successful, where you had, I believe, 100,000 youth or people voted for Pasteur in the Tuba region, Musa. And we had some of these guys, the old Murids and the Marabout's sons who were saying, you're not going to win here because you didn't come visit us. But they have done this successfully, Musa, as a result of the youth folk When I visited in 2022, and my buddy and I went to the market, I mean, he was against Sonko, but he, in the last few weeks, he decided, okay, because I'm not going to be a candidate, so I'm going to have to choose a political party I want to align with. And he aligned with Pasteur.
Right.
But long story short, he and I would go to the market to look for stuff, and he would debate with this young man, making the case that this guy, the accusations may have some truth to it, up until they all fell flat. So the planning and the legal team, Musa, we have to give them credit. They had a legal team of folks who were doing this pro bono to
Right.
defend Sonko. And that is one of the things that they used to sell to the international community, that the accusations on this young man don't have any merit. And even if the one with the young lady was to be thrown away, which they did, some of the courts did throw it away. The one issue that came up that didn't have any further was the issue of this minister accusing him that he has actually laid a false accusation on him.
Yeah,
And
Mamba
so
Nya.
Mamba Nyang,
Correct.
so we disqualify him. But
Mm-hmm.
then you disqualify the young man, but then you arrest him and put him in jail, and
Correct.
arrest some of these folks and put him in jail. Then what he did, this is significant, Musa.
Mm-hmm.
Macky Sall really dissolved the Pastef party. With
Right.
what powers he had, I don't know. But he also put this young man in jail. So these are some of the things that actually pivoted the Pastef political party to begin to have empathy from the older folks who were on the sidelines because of the accusations, who began to realize that this has to do with this young man's potential. It
Mm-hmm.
has nothing to do with the criminal accusations because he could have been allowed to run. But then you put him in jail, and all of these pictures and videos were spiraling on social media about the way the police were handling themselves.
Correct.
All of these things culminated in the support for Pastef because the Senegalese people finally began to believe that, okay, this has to do with Macky Sall's intent. Don't forget, he wanted to run for a third term, but Pastef and everybody stood and said, we're not going to allow you. So in a nutshell, Musa,
Mm-hmm.
mistakes were made by Macky.
Right.
I was a good supporter of Macky Sall, but once I realized this young man was being accused of things that he probably didn't do, and if he did something along the lines of accusing Mamba Nyang, you couldn't possibly remove him from participating in the election just because somebody else accused them of defaming their credibility or their name. So
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that happen, Musa. So
Mm-hmm.
the candidate being in jail, uh, releasing this candidate and his co-partner 10
Correct.
days before the election, because the planning again was a smart move of saying, if not me, then I have other options. I don't know
Right.
how he came up with this, but Musa, take away before I hand it over to you. There are
Right.
parallels between the way the Pastef group handled themselves,
Mm-hmm.
participated, and ended up winning this election, and the parallels of what we fought for 22 years. I see some things that we can always pick from what they did, and some things that we know for sure either it was by intention or unintentional. But I can see some parallels between the way they struggled and the way we struggled with Yaya Jammeh.
Absolutely. 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 So, and I'm going to bring in Karamba because Karamba, I've been hearing, especially after the elections, the elections of Pasteur, Gambians have been kind of saying we should take cues from Senegal. And I'm like, wait a minute. I believe what we've done in 2016 is even much bigger than what we've witnessed in Senegal. We had an entrenched dictator for the past 22 years, killing and sending Gambians abroad, creating fear. But as Gambians, we were able, for the first time within Africa, I could say, to actually remove a dictator without going through violence or anything of that sort. For me, that speaks volumes. So I remember every Sunday we come on this show with Basamba, we've always argued about Aki the dictator, where the Senegal is under a dictatorship. And my position has always been, look, this guy will abuse power. I really like Macky because of what I saw in Senegal. And I kept saying that. Anytime, maybe I flew into Senegal, I mean, it's like I'm in Atlanta. The infrastructure was unbelievable, like you kind of alluded to. there was this potential of creation of a middle class. Senegal was on the move. A country that has a potential, the foundation was there. It's just a question of taking it to the next level. But somehow, the Senegalese people were not happy. I guess it's going to come down to the, what they call it again, bread and butter issues. Poverty. But when you go to any of these villages in Senegal, they have access to water, access to electricity. But still, they were able to listen and say, you know what, there is an other way. So, Karamba, can you come in and help us out to understand that with everything that Maki did, nobody would doubt that the man actually brought development into Senegal. Nobody would doubt that. But still, the Senegalese people decided to vote against Maki and go to a totally different direction. Is it about the message, or is it about Senegalese people tired of the same old, same old? How do you really see it, Karamba?
I think it's a combination of different factors. Now, you are correct that over the years, on the infrastructure side, having the train, the airport, the real estate market changing, all of that materially on the surface looks like development, and it's actually development, because something that was not there, if it's built, then it is there. And then it was built under his watch. So he gets some credit for that. But infrastructure or other material things at the surface, that does not lift the majority of people. And also, there is a very, 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 very big gap between those who are plugged into the system. Correct. And then in that category also, you have the insanely corrupt ones who use the instruments of government, the institutions of government, to enrich themselves. And when they enrich themselves, they are able to buy people who will do the praise singing, people who will be their networks to the marabouts, and people who, and then they will spread the stolen, ill-gotten wealth within a clique of people who just think that they can feed the masses just empty rhetoric. If there is a high-speed rail from Dakar to Jamñajo, and you can't buy the ticket, or you don't have any work, and then there is no prospects for you in whatever small town or village that you are from, you are going to see that development as something where it's basically for others, because there will be a sense of alienation. And then also the sense of corruption, I think, had widened in the minds of people, because people underestimate just how revolting corruption is to an ordinary person, especially the person who feels like he's been cheated out of every opportunity. He can't get a good education. He can't find a way out, because remember, for the previous 30 years, the valve for all of us poor countries on that part of the continent is, you can find your way and then go somewhere else. And that going somewhere else is increasingly perilous and difficult. And then the places we all were heading to 30, 25 years ago, they don't want us to come back there anymore. So it's building up a pressure cooker within the people that are saying, well, I am a young man here. I don't have any prospects. It's all fine and dandy that you have 4-lane highways and expensive apartments and all of that. I'm not getting any of that. So there was what looked like development.
Karamba, you there? Or we're losing him? Keba, I mean, you can take it from, Karamba, because without a doubt.
But
okay, Karamba, you're back. We kind of lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, sorry about that. But what I'm saying is that there are various factors. So what looked like prosperity and development, sure, but it was one-sided and it was limited to the people that were plugged into the system. Yeah, I mean, if we are an ally of APR, and then you are close to the South or the people that handle this, and it was the same there. It was just Wad and his crew. So what the Pastef people were able to latch onto is the sense of broad-based grievance among the majority who feel like an elite have dealt them out of natural success, their natural wealth, especially with the promise of oil revenues and natural gas and all the minerals. They are saying all of this milliard coming in, we are seeing people, living high on the hog, and we ain't gotten anything. So that sense of grievance is always a very strong motivator for people to say, look, these people are only out for themselves. You understand? And then talking about the institutions, and I know all of you gave credit to the institutions that ultimately prevented the power grab that Maki was doing. But the institutions, in my view, succeeded only to a certain extent. Because remember, Maki and his people, they were able to manipulate aspects of the judiciary, you know, to go after people and then do, because incumbents and entrenched bureaucracies, they are always able to go after people using the institutions of state. Now, I am not saying all of the institutions failed, but some of them failed at a crucial time because they did malicious prosecutions, they removed people, and the parliament, forget it. They were just ramming anything that Maki wanted. Correct. And then they were not looking at stabilizing the democracy and defending it, because every good leader will be tested not on the good times. When there is a challenge and then you are able to stand up and say, I am not going to do this because it's not good for the country and it's not good for the overall well-being of our democracy. His team didn't do that. If it was only left to the Senegalese parliament, for example, they will pull up anything, including declaring a state of emergency, suspending the elections and all of that. And then aspects of the judiciary also got contaminated, because part of the strategy of going after Pastef is malicious prosecutions, disbanding them, as Saul alluded to, and then using the instruments of government, and then also using the people that are plugged into the system, including certain members of the Marabout class. You notice that some of them, they maintain a posture of either outright support for the system or ambiguity that allowed them plausible deniability, because they are also about maintaining control over the people that are underneath them. And then if you are going to have an internal rebellion brewing against an elite system that you are plugged into, if you are a smart Marabout, you're going to try to play your cards close to your chest, or to kind of stay above it, or to maneuver, to be whispering behind the thing. And this is also a potential realignment of how they also control the people that are part of their tariqas and that sort of thing, because these are the constituent members of the Senegalese society. And even though some of them, like Baranjai and all of that, who are plugged into the Murid system, were openly Pastef, and then they are very influential. Yes, that is that is a very strong signal to them that change is coming for them too. Because part of what Pastef is saying is that the relationship between the state and the religious establishment is going to be institutionalized, for whatever that means. So you can expect that they will probably try to tell the people, look, you represent everybody. So the era of kind of taking sides and using the control you have over your followers to try to steer politics. So that's probably another thing. So it's a combination of different factors. It's not just one thing. Some of the institutions were able to validate the principle that democracy needed defending. They did that. So
no doubt, Karamba, when it mattered, the institutions were able to say, look, the only way our democracy can be salvaged. I don't know why, whenever I'm talking, it is scratchy. I'm not sure whether it's from my end, most likely. I don't know why it's doing that.
But I can hear you clearly, though.
Yeah. So when it matters,
do you have another gadget open?
No.
Do you have another gadget?
No, I cannot even turn off my laptop.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. Maybe but Keba, obviously also what we have witnessed was an election that people were saying, well, yes, Pastef were able to win the hearts and minds of the Senegalese people, but clearly the government did not put up a good fight. Maki basically helped Pastef to be elected to some extent. You're talking about banning of Pastef. You're talking about personalizing it, going after Usman Sonko. Let's say they didn't do any of that. And Maki was able from day one get away from this politics of deuxième mandat, troisième mandat, and just focus on having a succession from APR, give the government and kind of be behind this Amadou Ba, give him the resources, and make sure APR, because you have to understand, after Amadou Ba was selected, you had some other people from the party that decided to throw their hand in the ring. Aliou Gunjai was one of them, the guy called John and Mamboy Jao. So in other words, PASTEF was faced with a government that was fragmented, a status quo that was fragmented, a party that was in disarray. And then we also, Macky was much on the sidelines, not getting involved. Is that a factor? Can you imagine if that was not the case, that Macky went out there in the rural areas, in Foutas, in Kafrine, in southern Senegal, and campaigned for for Amadou Ba, and all those other guys that actually left and threw their hand in the ring, they were all together. What would that have done to this election? Do you think that also has something to do with it, and not necessarily just all Usman Sonko and the messaging? Keba?
I think it's a combination of both, Musa. I think that, yes, you are right. Macky was concentrating on trying to decapitate PASTEF and get rid of PASTEF. Because, I mean, if you look at it, that is Macky's modus operandi. That's the way he operates.
That's his MO, yeah.
Yes, that's his MO. Sonko was not the first politician that Macky put aside. He imprisoned Karim Wada.
Khalifa Saleh.
And he imprisoned Khalifa Saleh, and he go after the opposition vigorously, and anybody that have the potential to take him on, he will go ahead and make sure that that personality is taken out of the way. Any opposition personality that a potential that is coming up, Macky will make sure that he will put you down. And that's where PASTEF came with a different approach, and the approach of bringing an idea, bringing this system change to the Senegalese people and present it to the Senegalese people. Macky was concentrating on Sonko, just like he did with Karim Wada and Khalifa Saleh. So he concentrates on the personality, because that's our African way. We have big men mentality from independence. We pop up personalities, and everything runs around that personality. So the biggest mistake Macky made was concentrating on that personality, which is Sonko, instead of looking at the idea, what these people are talking about. So PASTEF and they brought about a system change. They bring about a big shift in the political environment in Senegal. So instead of now concentrating on personalities, it's all about ideas, system and ideas. So the way they play the game by pushing Sonko in the forefront, and Macky concentrated on Sonko, not knowing that there are maybe hundreds of Sonko behind Sonko. And it was an easy thing to just come up and say, okay, now you have imprisoned Sonko, you have even basically taken Sonko out of the race. And he never get the imagination that, well, even if I take Sonko out of the race, there are hundreds of Sonko behind Sonko that can equally step in and do exactly what Sonko intended to do.
So,
wow.
Go ahead. Sorry, Keba. Go ahead.
Which we all witness. Yeah, that's what all of us witness. And then that's why it was easy to come up with Jomai Moi Sonko, Sonko Moi Jomai. Because it's the same idea.
But doesn't that make it, they fully understood the personality of Sonko, and Sonko understood it very well, that you can't just back another candidate without linking him with Sonko. That is why the Jumai and Sonko was very deliberate. They know exactly what they were doing. Because you have to understand, Jumai in the legislative elections, do you guys know that he actually contested Pim Joge Mom Sibopam, and the guy did not even win. He woefully lost. So here you have, it's like me going to Salem constituency in an election, and I did very badly. And a year or 2 years later, become a presidential candidate and become a national candidate, winning on the first round, almost 54%. What does that tell you?
That's what I said. I mean, Musa, that Jomai or Sonko didn't win the election. It's the idea that won the election. Yes.
Maybe it's Sonko. Don't you think? Maybe, yes, the messaging was there. Because people are telling you, look, if you actually read the project, like they want to say, because that's the word there, project. Everybody want to talk about the project. It's not really anything different. If you really open it, they're talking about access to education, to healthcare. It's not like a total paradigm shift. So there's a lot more to it. If you really dig deep and read the because project is just the manifesto. I mean, we have some nice manifestos from, you remember the United Democratic Party, Karamba, with the 5-point agenda? I mean, it's there. I mean, don't think for a minute. They have manufactured something so different. So, Saul, coming back to you, don't you think Maki really, and APR or Beno Bokayakar, they really made it easy for, because Sonko in the last general election, he came out third, 19% of the vote, behind Idrissa Seck. So something happened. There's no doubt. The Senegalese people embrace Sonko and Pastef. But one fognane tamit. Maki japale na lende. Beno Bokayakar ran a terrible, campaign, if you ask me. Banning of Pastef, sending these people to jail, elevating their statue. All of that Ajisar, Hubla, you talk about Mamba Inya. People begin to see the Senegalese people, for whatever reason, they're trying to deny us. Maybe there's a lot more to Sonko that we need to embrace. What say you, Saul? Or was it all about messaging and Pastef?
You know, if I agree with you, Musa, by saying that Maki Devlin Dimale, then people are going to look at us and say, okay, what planet are you guys on? Because to be honest, Maki did everything he possibly could to put this guy at bay. They did everything they possibly could, like Karamba said. He used some of the most critical institutions. He didn't use all the institutions, but he used the institutions of the police force, the law enforcement. He used the courts, and then he used, don't forget, we used the Conseil Constitutional, which actually denied Sonko the ability to run. So there was a planned and well thought out process by Maki. But I think, Musa, somewhere down the line, the pressure from the international community, pressure from the international community. And I'm going to take a page here, Musa, for us in the African continent.
Right.
We tend to not give the West a lot of credit. But I mean, I have to give them credit. They don't realize, well, somebody must have known this when they created it. But Musa, the fact that we have Facebook, we have WhatsApp, we have all of these social media networks. These are some of the networks that are beginning to help us change the face of Africa, that are beginning to help us tell our own stories. These are the networks and social media networks that are helping us be able to organize ourselves, as we did in 2016. One of the most pivotal things that we were able to use was this network, social media, and all of these ways to communicate. Less Yahya Jammeh would have continued to perpetuate himself, because the information would be out there, but they can come and say it's false because we wouldn't be able to have evidence to prove that. So Senegal, to say Maki to some extent, may have helped Pastef. A little bit of credit, whether he knew it or not, was, I believe, because of the international pressure that allowed him to stay aloof. He completely just kept himself from having to engage so much in the election, which is what you're pointing at. If Maki went to his constituency the areas where he won the last election and campaigned vigorously with Amadou Ba, maybe that would have had some impact on the results. But at the same time, him staying away, again, taking a page from what we planned, Musa, these things, these may not have been intentional, but somehow I see parallels because Yun Sin plan was Adama Barrow to stay in office for 3 years, after which he would stay in the office and let candidates run. Whoever won the election became president. That was our intention. Again, I see parallels there where the Makidaf could have intentionally or not, but you have to give him credit. You have to give the devil credit in that aspect of that one area that I see, which is, as it turned out, one of the reasons why his candidate didn't win. Because again, the claim would be, so Fekene Yo Danga Fogne Amadou Ba was your choice and you wanted him to continue the status quo, then why didn't you go out and defend your policies and what you have done, which you were talking about the fact that so much infrastructural development had happened.
Exactly.
He took all of those things that WADA was doing, the great things that WADA was doing in building infrastructure. Musa, 2011, Yodan dem Senegal, many of those do. 2011, time before WADA Neke, I mean, the power, the electricity was nowhere to be seen, Musa. Water shortages. Every 2-3 hours, didn't take Quran. It was impacting the economy. But when I went in 2022 in Chess, electricity went out. Electricity went out for 30 seconds, Musa. No more for Neke. I spent like 10 days in Senegal. Nekana for 6 days, Madam Banyu, Newat Nekafa. So these were things that are tangibles that people saw. Absolutely. That were complete economic growth that was happening. But then Pastef was able to remind people about the debt. They were able to tell them the amount of money Maki was borrowing. But also they pivot over to the natural resources that were being pillaged at the expense of people getting enriched. At the expense of
alluded to corruption.
Correct. Yep. So Karamba talked about development, Musa. Why development? Dafa am benn sëriñ bu mag bu nekk Sénégal boo xam ne daf dee wax ne he said this 8 years ago na mun nañu Africa dañu war a bàyyi seen xel. We can build all the infrastructure we want, but if we don't provide food on the table for the family members, or at least give them the avenues to be able to feed themselves, what is the purpose of all of this infrastructural development? And this is the bread and butter issue that I think took Macky Sall off the rails, and Amadou Ba couldn't campaign to win the hearts and minds of people. On top of the accusations and the persecution of Pastef and his people. But the young people who are here on the platform are saying what is apparent, Musa. That Pastef planned, and they made sure that they had. Musa, when you go into your corporate meeting here in the United States, they're saying every time, and this is about development. Suf plan B fail, what's the next option?
Correct.
They did that, and that has paid off, because if Sonko was shut down, because Maki has succeeded, look at no, he had shut down other candidates and put them in jail. And this was the plan, that if he put Sonko in jail and dissolved the Pastef, then the path would have been created for Amadou Ba. No matter what, he would have won the election. But Sonko pointed to this guy, which Keva is saying, this is unheard of, Musa. It is new, but then again, Musa, when Uncle Usainu Dabo was put in jail,
right?
Where did we go to? We selected another candidate, right? Through a referendum. They might have done it differently. People were asking Sonko, what is your next option? And he had always had these people out in social media and on the platform saying, if Sonko selects another candidate and says, this is my candidate, we're all going to vote for him. And they took that and ran away with it, Musa. And these are some of the things that actually helped them to come and win the election. Back to the Marabos, Musa, wa Tuba. Musa. Tuba is a powerful political, it's a powerhouse.
That's where PDS is very strong. And that is what.
Correct.
So people are saying that maybe if Karim was running, I mean, most likely all those Murids will be voting for Karim. I don't know. I mean, it's 2020 hindsight. It's very easy to say that.
Absolutely.
Pastef did extremely well. I mean,
they did.
Yes.
They did. But and the jury is still out there. Others will claim that the youth were so sensitized that there was communication and conversations out there that told them about the future, that their future depends on them participating in the election. To the extent that Amadou Ba and his folks were going out telling the youth, telling people that a good majority of these young men who were going with this passive and campaigning didn't register to vote. That message was out there. I go back to Pap Alinyang, who also rebutted by saying, okay, let's take that as the reason why Amadou Ba would win the election. But how about the families of the 44 young men who were killed? How about the families of the people who have been completely wiped out? People who were killed, some people who had major injuries, now disabled. How about those families? Do we think those parents whose children were out there fending for themselves and trying to bring money home to help them feed themselves, that those families would intentionally say, okay, let's talk about what happened to my children. I'm going to vote for Amadou Ba. These are conversations that were being heard by family members, and you can see what happened. But in a nutshell, Musa, I believe Maki staying away from not engaging in the election, costing the election, number one. But also more importantly is because the messaging by Pasteur was overwhelmingly convincing that not only is this guy persecuting this guy, he has a motive because they wanted to maintain the status quo. And this status quo is what is going to eventually start to remove some of these presidents who want to self-perpetuate.
No, Saul, you're right on the money. When Maki actually made it easy for Pastef to win, it's not about Maki wanting Pastef to win, because obviously all along, whether it was the Troisième Mandat, whether it was Maki did not want Pastef to win at all. But the way they handled it, like Beno Bokayaka, Maki wasn't able to bring them together. If that were to happen, now campaigning for Amadou Ba is one thing, but by just show me any political party that is fragmented, and I will show you a party that will lose an election. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Were they cohesive as a party? Were they out there countering, the messaging of Pasteur? And Karamba, coming back to this project that we've all been hearing, this project. Like I was just alluding to, I've seen a lot of nice manifestos, whether it's from the United Democratic Party, whether it's from DOI. You remember we had Khalifa Saleh had a 2011 agenda. I've seen some very powerful agendas in the Gambia. So the project wasn't anything special as far as I'm concerned. I don't know whether you have an opportunity to see it or at least hear about it. What makes it so different?
Yep. Good question, Musa. I just wanted to take a moment to just address one issue both you and Keba raised. I know you had tried to push back on the idea that, on the one hand, Keba was saying that the success is on the strength of the project and the messaging, and that it had nothing or very little to do with personality. And then your point, which is also valid, was that, Sonko is kind of central to this whole thing, his personality. And I think both of you are right to some extent. And then my view would be that it's the confluence of the two. Now, Sonko is the public face of the vision, and then he's also the battlefield commander for it. The general officer does not go into all aspects of the battlefield detail. If he has good colonels and majors and sergeants at the fighting level, they can still execute. And then Keba is also right in the fact that because of the strength of the project and the messaging, it was very easy to do substitution. You understand? But there is also a very valid reason why you had to say Sonko Moi Jomai.
Exactly.
Because Usman Sonko is the most powerful politician in Senegal today.
Yes.
And I think part of the strength of Pastef is because they know him better. Dealing with him in close proximity, and then they understand what he brings to the table. And part of his power is just the humility that he brings, along with the charisma that he has and the tremendous persuasive powers that he has. So I think both of you are right. And then it's probably the confluence of the two. The strength of the message, and because the message is strong, and it is very clearly communicated, and is also relatable to the average person. Because when you are dealing with, because information within voters is not at the same level, and sometimes we make that mistake. Correct. We view our Gambian politics within the prism of our understanding. Musa Jeng, as you are basically a suburban Atlanta guy, because you've stayed here for a very long time. Your perspective cannot be with Hamad Bunga Hamne Momla grew up in Demfai, who's never left CRR North. It's not the same. So sometimes we do that projection, and then it leads to strategic failure, because we are seeing things from our own prism. Correct. As opposed to the prism of what the Pasteur people did was to match a very charismatic and somebody who understands planning and execution, and then the public phase of it, and then have him earn credibility among themselves and the Senegalese people, and then they coupled it with good team spirit. And so you could substitute, if it was not Jomai, because I think they had 3 or 4 people.
Oh, they had 3 or 4 lined up.
Exactly, correct. That they have put in there. So substitution was easy on the strength of the message, what Keba is saying. That, and he is right, generally, that personality politics is a problem in our continent. It is. And that will make me pivot back to why you are saying Make did not campaign for Chudemon Kafrin or Futa or anything like that. Gisinga, in personality politics, and because he was not, he's somebody who was on his way out, he does not have deliverable influence. Correct. Because a lot of the people they are right in for the gravy train. They say this man is out. So munna them kafrin, munna them food and all of that. But I doubt it would have been a game changer, because they have been outmaneuvered by these Pasteur people. You understand? And then also their candidate was also not good. Because their candidate, Amud Ben Charisma,
low energy.
He's a product of the system. Yes. He has internal opposition from within his own camp.
From within, from affair itself.
So the fact is that, Make, to put his neck out there, and then he would have been a much more humiliating defeat, because he would have been facing angry people who are saying, like, look, you didn't play clean. You wanted to get the 3rd term anyway. And then people are forgetting it is these Pasteur people who effectively blocked this 3rd term appeal with their lives and their blood. Because the first plan was the 3rd term. He would have been able to maneuver the system to do that. So I think that was what I wanted to address. Now, what was your question again? I forgot.
Oh, I forgot myself, because you've taken me to a totally different.
You were saying, okay, and then the same thing you are talking about, I think more importantly, we need to look at what it means.
Oh, no. Yeah. Now I remember. I was talking about, okay, even though you kind of alluded to it, talking about the message itself and the relatability of the message. So I'm saying there isn't anything that is so different. If you really look at the messaging or the process, like the Senegalese would want to call it, that is so different from, let's say, the Agenda 2011 that Halifa had, or the 5-point agenda from UDP. Dealing with issues, it's nothing absolutely different. But somehow they were able to sell it to the Senegalese people, when in our case, it's never about the message. There's always that difficulty.
Yes, and that comes back to the difference in the nature of voters. You understand? In Gambia, it is much easier to appeal to people's dark sides than to their hopes.
Correct.
Yeah, if you come in, I remember SFL going to Nyamina, and then I know if they had voted for SFL, Nyamina has always voted for the government. Remember, that's where Sambaba is from, the minority. He's been there 20-something years. He's never done a damn thing for them. But he knows.
They always complain about that.
Yes, because he's adept at what is wrong with our politics, which is divide the people and then appeal to their dark sides. He's always been able to slide along with a 200 or 300 vote margin. That's all it is. And then he knows it works, because I will care about you. I will make sure that you are farmers, agriculture. I'll put resources. I'll bring competent people. You'll get water. You'll get roads and all of that. That is what is good for them. But they cannot relate to SFR. He doesn't speak their language. they've never seen him, and then somebody's going to come and tell them, I'm your buddy. And then here is a Sujer, and then you're not going to see him for 5 years. They'll vote for that person. So it is the nature of the voters. It's not the same thing. The people in Woolley, where Syria is currently here receiving an award, which he deserves, and we congratulate him for it.
Yes.
For 25 years, he ran the place well. He was sharing his salary with them. He gave them effective representation.
Yes.
But then they exchanged him for somebody who doesn't know his left from his right.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody who, and then they are supposed to be among the most politically aware constituency, because DOI is about teaching people on what representation means and then sacrificing.
Yes.
Why that at the end of the day, some guy who can ride on the NPP gravy train, the people forgot all of that. And they sent a good man home, and then they have an empty haftan there now. Who's going to do nothing for them, will collect all the paycheck for 5 years, and wouldn't represent them well. So there is a difference between, in Senegal, you can appeal to people's hopes. While in Gambia, to win, you have to appeal to people's dark sides. You have to appeal to their dark tribal instincts, their dark, personal instincts. This Musa Jeng, you can't trust him. He's not a good man. And then he doesn't know a damn thing about you. Why
Very easy.
To escalate. And then somebody will vote against their own interests just because they want to validate that dark side. And that is the problem we have. People don't vote on agendas or ideas. If they did, then people with ideas who say, the DOI people, if you put them in office, if there is a meeting in Dakar, they will get in the Gele. They're not going to do a private jet.
No.
But they're not going to vote for them because people don't vote on ideas.
But Kamba, though,
yeah.
Because when you talk about Senegalese and Gambians, we are basically the same people, same culture, same language, you name it.
Yeah.
Why are they able to, at least the majority of their voters, is it the education? Is it the exposure? Is it about something Frenchy?
No, I think, we like to think we identify ourselves with them a lot. You are right. It's the same Wolof, it's the same language, same Mandinka, same Jola, and all of that. While giving the cultural orientation, like I told you, the Senegalese is much more easier to appeal to his optimistic side. And then also, they are more pragmatic. You understand? I can make a deal with you, even though we are not politically 100% aligned, but I can work with you. Why we are the exception. Most people cannot do good teamwork. Even within the party itself, even within political parties, because the team spirit is not there. And then people are not saying, we gotta be pragmatic, let's make a deal. In politics, nobody can agree all the time. Never.
It's not possible.
Ever. No, it's not possible to do. But the Senegalese are a little bit more pragmatic. And I will come back to what I said. You can appeal to their optimistic side. In Gambia, what works for people that, especially people that have power, is to appeal to people's dark side, to bring fear. That's why in the last election, they brought fear. If you vote for these UDP people, they're going to send all of you out of the country. I spoke to people in Same. Right. They keep polling. I grew up there and all of that. They tell me, well, you are telling us to vote for you guys, but they are telling us you're gonna send. I said, well, you're some more Sanchez de Cabini, right? Who's gonna send you out of your own village? But it appeals to people because you come to them and you say, well, this guy, he's speaking a different language and all of that, and then he's got it in for you. It works. It works. So Lolo Tagay, and then that's why it is very hard for us to do an idea-based politics. You have a 5-point agenda. People will say, it has merit, but that's going to appeal to just the minority of people. Most people will vote for reasons other than what you are offering them to do. Maybe they don't like you. There is no doubt. Holding your nose and voting for somebody in Gambia. Buguma Musa Jeng buguma ko bepare duma ko sanil bepare buguma ko bugasa.
Buguma ko deglu sa.
Yeah, duma ko deglu. Musa is saying something that I don't want to hear, so the might get that completely. Duma ko deglu. And this is our problem. Constantly, this is our problem. We can, even not only in politics, in any social gathering, we can. Even in religion, look at the Ngiro Ngaro in religion.
Yes.
Everybody wants to be kind of just their own sheriff. You know, and then you are saying, you know, what fan la yeremande yalla neka si dine. Why are you not emphasizing that? And then the most people we know in Deen are humble and they try to be persuasive, quiet type. Why party and everything we bring division. And that's it. That's what is different between us and the Senegalese. They are more pragmatic, and then they will, you can appeal to their optimistic
their brighter side. No
their
doubt. No doubt. But Keba, all right, pastors have been out there with their prose, telling the youth, I mean, creating expectations. People are saying, okay, it's all nice and dandy. When you are outside, it's always easy to talk about this thing is wrong, this thing is wrong, there is corruption, I mean, there is poverty, people are taking the back way, dying in the oceans, there is this Nicaragua thing. Now it has become their problem. And people are saying, be ready now, Pastor. There is expectation. And it's not going to take long for the Senegalese people to say, okay, show me the beef. Do you think it's just going to be another disappointment by Pastor from the Senegalese people saying that because we all know the poverty, it's to get rid of the poverty, it's going to take time. How do you see that? The expectation that people have for Pastor and the reality of governance and governing. Senegal is still it's a developing country, massive poverty. How do you think that PASTEF is going to maneuver to deal with the expectations from the Senegalese people?
well, Musa, first thing you can address what is development? I'm going to Macky Sall build a very robust infrastructure in Senegal.
He did.
And you will go to Senegal and you see a very nice infrastructure, a new airport, good roads and everything. But being in the United States for so many years, I have been watching what's going on in this country and read a little bit of the history of this country. And I come to realize and ask myself, what is really development? Development is not infrastructural development. When you say development, you're talking about the people. Infrastructural development is a necessary part of the whole developmental agenda. I remember moving Texas. I was seeing these roads, these rural roads, the OA FM 21, 22, FM something number. So my own question is more, what is FM? The only FM I know is radio FM. So it was so strange. Then I just went and asked and do some digging into it. Come to find out that FM means farm to market.
Farm to?
So farm to market. So roads you don't build. They were not just building roads to impress the voters that we build these roads. There was a necessity to build these roads. So they were building these roads to enable the farmers to transport their goods to the market. That's why that's why the name FM, farm to market. So when they decided to build the roads, they were necessitating the transportation of the goods from the farm to the market. So they call these roads FM. So that tells you that development is all about people. You develop people. You necessitate commerce. You stimulate the economy. Economic activity start going on. So that is development. Development without linking it to economic activity, to economic development, is meaningless. Moi liñ doon wax noonu sool bi Senegalese boobu doon wax ne kenn du lekk yoon yi ak airport. That's what it means. Development means lifting the economic status of the people. So you necessitate economic activity, economic development will take place. So from independence in Africa,
Keba, I have to push back. Bilal, I don't want us to kind of take development and just put it on the margins. You will never be able to bring socio-economic development with the infrastructure. You're talking about a businessman who is going from Banjul to Woolley or from Banjul to, you need infrastructure. Look at the change that has happened in that Senegambian bridge. To tell you the truth, economic development, changing the lives of the people, you cannot do it without infrastructure, without roads, without that. That is essential. That is fundamental. So I think we need to be very careful to kind of try to slice and dice it, thinking that when you're talking about development, you're talking about, I mean, people's having food to eat, and absolutely important. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, you will never be able to bring economic viability without that foundation, that infrastructure. I just thought I need to push back on that.
Well, Lolota Musa, bring my wala example that FM wrote. So what was the determining factor? More one, okay, in economics, you have limited resources and unlimited wants in economics. Buga buga yi no opa resources in so you have to make a choice between buga buga yi. So okay, let's say for example, we want to build roads all over the Gambia, but how are we going to prioritize this road building? Okay, so if you produce a lot of rice in Central River region. Why? How are we going to transport that rice to the market, to Banjul, to Basse, and the rest of the country? So, okay, I'm naming 3 or 4 major roads you have. It will take this rice from Central River region to the rest of the country. So those are the roads that's going to be our priority to distribute that rice in the country. Why? So said law, all these infrastructural projects, you borrow the what? How do they determine where to build the roads? The way they determine where to build the roads, more. Okay, Upper River region, for Funonu, I'm now for a lot of support. So, I'm now this $10 million. I'm going to put it to Upper River region.
Right.
Well, okay, what is that region bringing to the economy? So it's purely based on politics. It's not based on economic decisions. It's not an economic decision. It's a political decision. Why Dikabini in the industrial world, they were basing their priorities on economics. It was not based on politics. It was economic decisions they were making. Now, okay, so you want to build road A and road B. Okay, how much money road A is going to bring to the economy, and how much money is road B going to bring to the economy? That's going to be the decision making. So, in Africa, our major obstacle is we make decision based purely on political gain, on political reasons. We don't make the decisions on economic reasons. Understand?
Absolutely.
So
the problem is not really the infrastructure; it's how it is allocated. You're saying political expediency.
Correct.
I mean, and not necessarily. But we have the activists. It's been so he wants to. He's addicted, and I'm the man so we know tanga. That is why you can see I'm very somber today, because stop somber. Stop somber. Where are you?
Hi, Musa.
Most, I am here.
You're on mute.
And no, I'm unmuted now. And thank you to all those that are holding the fort. Keba Foon, seeing Mr. Sol Baji and they're gonna the other crocodile on the side, Karamba. But most, I have been listening in and out.
Right.
And I think there is something that I heard you say, and that is sometimes lost in all this. Can Gambia do what Senegal did? The question is, Senegal has done what Gambia did.
Exactly.
Ours, I think, was a lot more complicated than the Senegalese situation. And then now, of course, when something happens, everybody is trying to see how they can replicate that in their own countries. It's just like when 2016 happened. Some of us got calls from everywhere.
Exactly.
The Togolese wanted to know how we did it. The Burkinabes wanted to know how we did it. The Ivorians wanted to know how we did it. The Guineans. So we got all these calls, some of us, from people asking, how did you do this? What can happen? I remember being invited to a conference call by a group of activists from another country. And they wanted to know, what did we do? The fundraising aspect, the activist aspect. So it's like, if there is anything, we are also a reference to changing a government. Senegal changing a government is nothing new. In fact, if you study the Senegalese political landscape, it will look like every other 2 terms, they will not only vote in a new president, but they will vote in a new party.
Yes.
It was Wada. When Wada was gone, they brought APR. APR had a candidate in this election. They said, no, we want to go Pastef. And chances are in 10 years, they may go to another group. So this is nothing new in Senegal. But you also have to appreciate the resilience of the Senegalese people in fighting Maki's dictatorship, which I know you're not going to agree to. I don't care anyway whether you do or not. To at least make sure that at least they were able to salvage their country and have the change that they